I'd like to call the meeting to order. We have a quorum here, and we have visitors that are on a time schedule that I wanted to get in first. Let me first of all say that all cell phones and electronic devices be turned off or in a new position as not to disturb the meeting. And any member of the public also has a right to make an audio or video recording of an open session of a public meeting. A member of the public who wishes to record a meeting must first notify the chair and must comply with reasonable requirements regarding audio or video equipment established by the chair so as not to interfere with the meeting. The chair is required to inform other attendees of such recordings at the beginning of each meeting. Okay, Kelly, you have the roll call. Do we have any citizens' participation tonight before we get going? No, none at all? Okay. Then I'd like to ask representatives of the school committee to come up and explain their situation. Oh, thank you. Why don't you come over here so the phone, so you get the camera.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll move out of the way. I will move out of the way. Sit right here.
You
get to sit there.
Next to Kelly again?
Yes.
It's been too long.
Did it work last night?
Did it work? Well, she was great. I don't know how I was.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Okay, the floor is yours, Mr. Sweat.
Thank you. We have all of one of the members of our school committee present, plus our superintendent, Dr. Ravinovich. It's a somewhat unusual situation, and it's a somewhat urgent situation as well. The unusual part is that after town meeting approved the fiscal year 13 budget for the town and the schools, the state came through with two additional amounts of money which the school district feels is appropriate to come to the children of Wareham for the following reasons. The first amount of money is coming from a source with which everybody's familiar, which is Chapter 70. But the ultimate amount of funding for Wareham was $120,000 and $120,053, something like that. It's on your sheet. Mm-hmm. More than was in the town's budget. And as I know you're aware, we reduced our budget to $250,000 below last year's budget in the hopes that we would get additional funding both through the debt exclusion and the override process. That did not work out. So we are currently $250,000 below last year's budget, which may, and I say may because the final calculations have to be done and will take a little time, which may actually be below minimum. Stop me if I'm in error, but that remains to be seen. So we think that this will not only benefit the children of Wareham, but also benefit the town to the extent that it reduces the degree to which we're below minimum funding for the school district. It is, I believe, appropriate for a town meeting to appropriate this money. I don't think there's any way it can just simply come to us automatically, although I appreciate the spirit of the towns that do that. So we're asking for $120,053 to be added to the school budget because that is the amount of the increased Chapter 70 aid that will be coming to the town as part of the normal Chapter 70 process. So that's the first bucket of money that we're asking for your support to appropriate. As to what we will do with that, that is on the agenda for tonight to discuss. But I assure you, we've got lots of places and then some to use that money. And it will be, as I said, publicly discussed and voted on by the school committee. If you'd like, I will pause there and ask for your comments and questions.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Sweat? Mike?
I'm just somewhat confused.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay, because it states, specifically state educational age, I mean, you're saying that you feel as though this needs a town meeting vote to appropriate this money for that particular use?
Yes.
And that wouldn't automatically be used for that, if that is what it's stipulated as?
Correct. And the reason is as simple as the budget process has a line item for net school spending.
Mm-hmm.
It's an amount of money, and it's on the expense side of the ledger. The town doesn't technically see, unless they do the math, what percentage of that comes from state aid and what percentage of that comes from the town's contribution.
I see.
So we have to officially appropriate that money for that line
I
item.
got you. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I just want to point out to Mrs. Kasuli that I had the same question, and I'm on the school committee, so thank you.
That's all right.
Anyone else have any? David?
What have the selectmen said regarding this?
On this subject, they have been, to my knowledge, mute. We will be meeting with them, I have been assured by the chairman of the Board of Selectmen on the 21st to get their endorsement of this as well. So I cannot in any way characterize their view on this subject.
So what we're saying is that the selectmen in 13 days will be meeting to discuss this issue.
That's my understanding, yes. As a matter of fact, Selectman Begley, who was present at the public hearing on the 1st of August, made the request of Chairman Holmes following that public hearing. So I thank her for putting us on the agenda. We were going to request it anyway, and I have been assured by an email communication that I received that it will be on the agenda.
But we, as a school committee, have not yet discussed, through the chairman, the school committee has not yet discussed the specifics, allocations of how you intend to use the money. You are asking for our endorsement of this concept before.
We're literally asking for you to trust that the school committee, with input obviously from the school district management, the superintendent in particular, will make a good decision as to how the money will be used. I can tell you that there are at least 3 areas which have compelling needs. One is, even though it's a capital item, the high school roof. There's an open question as to whether to leave it leaking was causing damage beyond the obvious, and therefore the integrity of the overall building, and some of us are extremely concerned about that. Then the other area is textbooks as a result of the curriculum mandate. It does seem to me silly for us to be having people standing in front of copying machines as a way of coping with that mandate rather than having an actual textbook for people to use. And the third is also obviously compelling. We're looking at class sizes in the elementary schools of 27, 28, 29 kids, and so we could theoretically hire teachers with that money. But that's an oversimplification. Dr. Rabinovich will be going into much more detail about the options. But those are 3 areas that are, to start with, we would consider to be very valid places to be using the money. And by the way, my other committee members may have other thoughts, and feel free to interject. Cliff?
I would just say that technology goes along with textbooks as well. That was what the debt exclusion was for, so
Right.
I would lump them together.
Barry, anything to add on that?
We'll discuss it later this afternoon with our recommendation.
David?
Does this happen every year?
That's what happened.
There's money that comes from the state that wasn't dealt with in April?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it certainly doesn't happen every year. Sometimes it's negative, sometimes it's positive. This happens to be a particularly unusual situation in the sense that it's a fair amount of money, and on top of that, we're $250,000 below last year, and the debt exclusions and overrides failed. So when you put all that together, it becomes that much more critical. Fair?
Yeah, I was just gonna add that because of the state budget process and the fact that the Senate and the House Joint Committee doesn't come out with their recommendation until late June, you know, it was July 1st before that number came out. And so they look at all the numbers that have changed between then. That's why they felt they could add this $120,000 to the formula. So it has happened before. We have gone to October town meeting and received additional aid money.
Have you ever not received it?
No.
Have you ever lost?
No.
David?
I'm struggling with several items. One, the selectmen had 5 items to put out on the ballot. They chose not to put schools, but they did the 2.5. They did the gym roof, the textbooks, and the study for
Minor
forest. For me, the gym roof is just another capital item that if we don't address, we continue to spiral down. We're not taking care of our own buildings. School departments have a marvelous record of doing a lot with very little. I'm inclined, in my case, to look at it in terms of if the school committee were to ask the board of selectmen to allocate a sum of money for the repair of the gym roof, it would be hard for the selectmen to say no. But I think some decision has to be made by the schools as to what they want to support and how they want to support it. I'm done.
Okay, does anyone else have a comment? I have a comment. Go
Throw a
ahead.
little caveat too, though.
Sure.
I'd be careful about talking about taking textbooks and standing in front of photocopiers. After having spent 9 years in the Distinguished Museum defending intellectual rights, we both know that's a copyright violation of major proportions. Okay, it would get us into an awful lot of trouble.
It sounds like it would be, but I believe that some of these licenses actually permitted. But
As long as it permits it, but I'm
I
saying
understand.
that it's a dangerous practice. Very dangerous practice.
maybe it's workbooks. Anyway,
It's still, they do the same thing.
I hear you, loud and clear.
I do have one comment. Do you have a comment as well, sir? Go ahead.
Should I have a comment at this point?
You always do.
Yeah, I know, that's the problem.
I know.
We welcome your comments, Mr. McDonald.
Sure?
Yes,
You need a better PR person than what you got, because.
you can't afford it.
I know, but you might want to consider it, because when the comments coming back to me, and then some of these may be well-placed comments in the end, is saying, you know, if I give them $125,000, they're gonna spend it on something other than what they should spend it on. So, I don't know the basis for that, I kinda do, but, you know, some of the things that have been decided over the last year have been a little, in my opinion, controversial. But, I think if you designate this money, if you make it clear what this money's gonna be used for to people, I mean, if it's for transportation, it's for transportation. If it's for school roof, it's for school roof. But if it's just going into the school side on a general basis, then, you know, maybe you do, you just divide up over books, but if you give them, the public, a little more, and I know it's hard to, you know, I know that's hard, but if you give them a little more explanation, they're gonna be more apt to support it. That's just my opinion, whether or not.
We're gonna have a public debate on this issue literally in an hour or so. So we're not trying to hide, you know, what we plan to use it for.
Okay, well, that's what I mean. I mean, seriously, that's, go ahead.
I think he outlined the three major points we're gonna use it for.
And I wasn't here and I apologize. But that's all.
He talked about three major points, and I lean towards one, but I'm willing to have the debate, you know, tonight.
Bruce swallows the whole thing.
Yes?
But ultimately, you'll decide.
No,
as a
each
committee,
one of those
right?
areas could
Could
swallow the whole
Yes.
thing.
Could we keep this organized?
My mindset,
I'm sorry, Don.
The roof was the smallest loser.
I wasn't gonna say anything.
That's what I was
I-
thinking too.
Go ahead, Mr. Sylvia.
My mindset is a little bit different. I think if we get additional chapter 70, what we're asking for is a leap of faith. And I know, but you know what? You've got some educated people on the school committee. We looked at these issues with a fine tooth comb. We haven't always agreed on them, but I will say this, all right? And I think I can talk about almost 50 years of experience and an earned doctorate in education leadership. We have not made bad decisions. We have not made bad decisions.
Controversial, is what I said.
Maybe so, and I haven't agreed with all the decisions that have been made, but we really haven't made bad decisions. We've made decisions in what we thought would be in the best interest of our kids and the best interest of our parents. So all I can do is kind of like a leap of faith. I understand that, but I'm of the mindset that when we finish this meeting tonight, that we will have earmarked where specifically this Chapter 70 money is going to go. And as long as we do that, as long as we're open and transparent, I don't think anybody can have an issue with that. What we need from the Finance Committee is a leap of faith that we're going to do whatever we can to try to make it work, given the fact that we reduced our budget by so much to balance it out this spring.
I just like to, go ahead.
I just
Wait,
want to
save it.
I just want to say one thing. I hope that we decide, whatever it is decided to do, that it's a long-term fix because it's short-term money. I mean, this will not be there next year. We can't guarantee it. We can't set something up that's not going to be there next year. And I hope that we've learned that lesson with some past experiences of having money, setting things up, and then the next year, it's not there.
The trouble for me is I can make compelling arguments for all three areas.
I agree.
So, whatever is decided, and it's our responsibility to make that decision, and it's the voters' decision to whether to support it, and that's why we're here.
Go ahead.
I think people have to remember, we came to this group, we spent a full day with members of this group, and we laid out a plan where we needed $2 million more than we got, okay? Together with this committee, we came up with a strategy to try to get some things. It didn't pan out. Where the town was cut to level funded, the school department went down $250,000. So since we were cut $2 million and we're coming back asking for $120,000 that the state is giving for educational aid, I would hope that this group would support that. And to the point about whether or not we can count on it again, I would disagree, because the base today at the meeting, answering one of the members' questions, I'm going to go through a little tutorial on Chapter 70, and I'm going to talk about how that figures are calculated. And it's calculated on what the base is from the year before. That 120 is now in the base. So I will show that, I will show the formulas, I will show the places where people can go. So any of you that are interested in that, you may want to watch the school board meeting when it's on reruns, including Mr. Curtis, who would like to see it as well.
I'd like to comment on one thing too, before and it's basically that what both Dr. Rabinovich and Chairman Sweat have not mentioned, they also have a serious crisis with the 5th grade. They've got over 30 kids in each class. I mean, that's an impossible task right there that they're dealing with. I think what they're just requesting the support is of their own money. In my mind, this money is dedicated to Chapter 70, and it should go to the school department. And I think they're elected by the people of this town. They know what they need the most, and they know what they have to live with. And I'm prepared to support that concept. However, I respect everyone else's being as well.
You want a motion?
No, Mr. Heath, yeah, I had a question.
Well, my question comes down to whether or not the motion is appropriate at this time. All right, and the reason why I do this, I think I have a pretty good feeling for the members of the committee. I think you've heard some reassuring conversation here tonight. But the warrant articles close on the 11th and the 14th, all right, it's presented to the chairman, and the 17th comes to the FinCom. And we have to address each and every article as written, make our recommendation, and it's a written recommendation to the town based on the article. So I think a motion at this time is inappropriate. Okay, I don't think this is the place and time to do it. All right, it's part of the process as far as the warrant approval and our report that goes. But personally, I don't think you need to anticipate any surprises. But I think it would be inappropriate to make a motion at this point, because what will happen is we're pre-approving an article before it's presented to us. We can't do that.
Would the chairman view a non-binding sense of the committee vote to be inappropriate?
I certainly would not, and non-binding, and not, how does the rest of the board feel? Go ahead, Mr. Trudell.
The selectmen will not meet until the 21st. We have a meeting scheduled for the 22nd. I would like to hear from the selectmen, their perspective on this particular issue.
Can I say something here?
You're gonna.
I know,
Control is an illusion.
Well, no, it's not. I listen well. I can't be obedient, trust me. This is the school's money. I mean, this is what the money is for. It's for the school. So regardless of what the selectmen say, and I think if they said it wasn't the school's money, I'd have a little problem with what they had to say. But this money is Chapter 70 money, and this McKinney-Vento was for the transportation. So this is the school's money. And that's how I feel about it. Now, again, I don't really have a problem with them getting the money. What I would like to know is, when they get the money, where's it going? Because you said it yourself, nothing passed. So now you got problems with teachers, you got problems with roofs, you got problems with buses. So I'd like to see that and again, it's not my call, it's their call, but I'd like to see what they come up with before I say yay or nay.
This is an hors d'oeuvre for what they need, for crying out loud.
I know it is, but that's their money, they should.
That's a great way to put it.
Thank
you.
Hold on, okay,
If-
Mr. Heath was first.
If I may, because also you say it's their money. We know the intent of the legislature, we know what conversation has been. However, the money goes to the general fund, that's why it has to come up as an
I
article.
understand that.
Okay,
So if
and
the
at that point, it becomes the property of the rest of the town. They make the decision, we can support the article, we can say this is the best way to do it. However, town meeting has the final say.
And as I said, I have a real problem with the selectmen balked at this, because that would really be.
They haven't balked.
They
I
haven't
know,
balked.
I said, and again, I said, if they balk at this.
I didn't hear the
What is
answer.
wrong here? People I have no problem, it's their money. I agree to support that aspect of it, but again,
Through you, Madam Chairman.
Yes.
We have not,
Mr. Heath.
the selectmen have not met since all this became available. So therefore, we don't know their position, we don't know their policy, we don't know their opinion. I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm trying to say, I don't think we can pre-approve or even non-binding come say that we're going to do something with an article, because then we're going to be asking it 100 times over.
Yeah.
Okay, so, like I said, I think they can go and speak tonight with pretty good confidence as to where we would go. All right, as long as the articles are written correctly, all right? But this is, I'm sorry, this is too soon.
Well,
And I understand some of the situations that they're in as well.
how does everyone else feel?
I just have a question, and I don't know whether the magic man just walked in the door, so maybe he can answer the question. I don't know what the town administrator's office intentions is, but if I'm understanding this right, the way Mr. Sway explained it to me, the town could technically say they have applied $120,000 to that, in addition to that, and then back out their own contribution. Am I correct?
That is absolutely correct. The
That's
truth
correct.
is, as a matter of law, what is absolutely ours is $12,300,000 and some odd thousand. That's the total Chapter 70. The rest of it comes from the town, and the total, it's the old fungible problem, right? So you're 100% correct, which is why we're here seeking your support.
If I can clarify, just to make sure that Bonnie understands, there's also the other $18.5 million that the town has to put in. It's called the minimum contribution.
Okay.
So the budget is $30,500,000. That is the minimum that they can spend on the schools.
Will that go
not
up
the
next year?
12.5.
Will that go up next year?
Yes, it went up from last year by $500,000
I'm
approximately.
guessing they probably should cooperate.
Does anybody else have any additional thoughts on this? How do we feel about an informal support or just waiting until the 22nd? I'd like to know informally how people feel.
Well, I think you've got the feeling that informally we support it. It's already out there on.
I won't make a public statement on that until I have all the information.
Okay.
There you go. I prefer to wait, see where the school's going, see where the selectmen are going.
See what the year is.
Okay. Okay.
I would say 2 weeks ago, we tried to be reasonable and support the lesser of two evils, and we got burned.
Yeah, I'm not doing that
Okay,
again.
so I don't want to do it again.
Okay. Did you have something to add, Tom?
I would support it.
So would I. Okay.
I do feel a little bit like Oliver Twist, but I'm not gonna go there. The second matter is where the urgency is, and I'll explain why. Thanks to, and I think it's fair to say, thanks to the Massachusetts Association of School Committees alerting the state auditor that there was an unfunded mandate associated with the transportation of homeless children under the federal McKinney-Vento legislation. The state auditors and bumps actually grabbed hold of this, did the audit, and determined, yes, it was in fact an unfunded mandate, did a study, got a sponsor, legislation was in fact passed, signed by the governor, and we now have somewhere around $11.5 million in the budget, which is almost a rounding error, but is not a rounding error to, well, Wareham, to be spread across the Commonwealth for the reimbursement of the costs associated with transporting homeless children back to their root communities. When the actual legislation, when the study was initially done by the state auditor's office, we reported, or at least they decided to report, based on the information we gave them, that it was costing us about $125,000. Ultimately, the June 30th report that we are preparing as we speak demonstrated that we've actually spent $167,000. An explanation from the State Department of Education has determined that the method by which they will determine how we get, how much money we actually get, is that we will be reimbursed our costs, or whichever is less, on a prorated basis, depending on what's happened with the rest of the Commonwealth in the transportation. So you can imagine an Excel spreadsheet where 167,000 is next to Wareham's name, and they have all the other numbers, and they add it all up, and it comes up to 11.3 or $11.5 million. Everybody's happy, everybody gets their costs. But let's say it adds up to $15 million. Then they would do a simple, which we've all done on an Excel spreadsheet, proration, and that 167 will become something less because they've only got the $11.5 million to spend. The reason the urgency is there is because if the town, this money will also go into the general coffers. We're requesting that it be allocated to an additional $125,000, which is a conservative estimate of what we expect to get. It would be no more than 167, but perhaps something less than that. We'd like it added to the non-net line item. Failure to add it to the non-net line item and absorb just into the general fund, and we recognize the town has lots of needs as well, would mean that we would be deficit spending in the non-net transportation area. We know that. We had over a $300,000 deficit. We made up most of that with the transportation revolver, and then ended up taking it from an area that some members of the committee are not particularly happy about, but we decided, for better or for worse, that we didn't want to hand a $70,000, $80,000 bill to town meeting in October. We've never done that before. We thought it was a lousy precedent to start, but there's no way we think that we can absorb that kind of deficit again, which means we would have to start to either add fees or cut services to the parents and children of Wareham for getting their children to and from school. That would have to start literally September 4th, what is the date?
September 4th.
September 4th. So that's the Chapter 70 money is nice to have, but the sooner we get an answer, the better. We don't really want to start September 4th cutting services and adding fees if we don't have to. Now, you might say, this is a short-term fix, this McKinney-Vento money. It is and it isn't. It is in the sense that it doesn't solve the capital spending problem of our aging fleet. But it does get us at least one more year through with the standard of service that we think the community needs, especially given the demographics of the students that we transport. I've had kids anecdotally come up to me and literally say, who are freshmen in high school and going to be sophomores next year, Coach, I have no way of getting to school other than a bus. So that's an anecdotal piece of data, but I can't believe we can't extrapolate it to some extent, especially for kids who live in the very large area that Wareham represents. So we'd like to start out with the status quo. The only way in good conscience we can start out with the status quo and not cut services and add fees is the assurance that this McKinney-Vento money will be available to us. Having said all that, I still believe the long-term plan for this problem is to rely on an operating budget that goes up reasonably, so small amounts each year as compared to the fact that it was literally cut $20,000 from FY12 to FY13. A transportation revolver which continues to be run effectively on an entrepreneurial basis to maximize the surplus that it generates, and the McKinney-Vento and some portion of that often talked about meals tax, the combination of McKinney-Vento and the meals tax would allow us to gradually modernize our fleet. The advantage of that is twofold. One is it obviously gives us a much better fleet, but it also reduces the maintenance costs because the younger the fleet gets over time, the less we'll have to spend on maintenance, and that reduces the burden on the operating budget. So this is somewhat urgent because September 4th will be here, and we'd like to give guidance, that is the school committee, to the superintendent and the transportation manager as to what they should do on September 4th.
Anyone? Yes, Bonnie?
You didn't mention, you said it's not a short-term fix on this. Is this a budget thing that's going to continue, do you feel?
Yes.
So?
This is considered an unfunded mandate. It's required it's legally required to be reimbursed by the state. The fact that they've actually passed the legislation signed by the governor, et cetera, there's no indication this is one-time money.
Okay.
This is an annual amount that will be coming to the town. Now, how much will be coming, of course, you know, in that sense, it's almost like, I know Barry feels it's somewhat like the circuit breaker money. You know, they start out reimbursing for at 70 or 72%, then it drops down to 30 or 40%. So the amount of that money could vary. The good news about it is it's a very, very small amount compared to the total multi-billion-dollar state budget, but it turns out not to be small to Wareham.
Does anyone have any questions on the
By the way, just a quick footnote. I mentioned earlier that the demographics of the students that we serve are not really well understood and they're not reflected in the state formula. This is just an indication of that fact. I mean, think about that. We are a community of 22,000 and we're spending way disproportionately more on McKinney-Vento than on a per capita basis than you would expect.
Anyone have any questions? Can we, does anyone feel that we can take a vote and entertain a motion? Somebody speak, please.
I feel as though this money definitely should be used in the spirit that it's meant to be. That's for darn sure. I can't even see how you could drop it into the general fund and use it in any other way, but then I'm not into all the legal technicalities of it, so.
Mr. Trudell?
Usually after a long silence while you wait for a motion, it's an indicator that people are not going to make a motion. Just a point to help you.
Okay, okay.
Can I, maybe,
Go ahead.
we have another meeting in August, 22nd,
Yeah.
Right.
Then after the selectmen.
That'll happen after the selectmen, right? So then we'll have a better feel for where they're going. And again, this is what the money's meant for, is transportation. Just like the one above, 70 is meant for school. So I agree with the philosophy that this money does not, and everything, believe me, municipal maintenance goes through general fund for some damn reason, excuse my language. But I think from my standpoint, I would support this effort, but I think we need to get a better feel for what's going on with the selectmen.
So you'd like us to take the leap of faith?
Well, I think you guys are gonna have to, you know what, I really think this is something that school committee and selectmen get together and hash it out. FinCom supports whatever after the fact. But right now, for asking us to support it, yeah, we'll support it, but on the surface. But as we get closer to that point, then we'll understand more of what all the other, and I'm like Bonnie, maybe I don't know all the ins and outs either, so.
Speaking for I'm sorry.
Let me see if I can ask a question.
Go
of
ahead, John.
someone. I just read the newspaper, and I came into this meeting with the impression that the school busing was going to only be up to the 7th grade. Am I reading something wrong here? That there was going to be a major cut in the number of the size of the fleet and the grade service.
Well, when this chairman tried to get a motion a couple of meetings ago on the subject of implementing that cut so that it would be only K through 8, just K through 8, I got deafening silence, as the phrase goes, as well. So the appetite for a K through 8 transportation system for our children, on any number of reasons, plus charging a fee,
$75.
plus charging a $75 fee, isn't there. So that would, however, have to be considered if we didn't have any comfort level with respect to support for this money coming to the non-net budget. That's a fact, in the sense that the superintendent and I believe we don't have the authority to deficit spend, knowingly deficit spend. So the school committee is in a very uncomfortable position if this money doesn't come to us. Very uncomfortable.
But you're saying that $125,000 solves the problem?
Yes, it solves the operating deficit problem.
Doesn't buy any buses or
It
anything?
doesn't, well, it may allow us to buy a used bus here or there, 167, for example, is different than 125, et cetera. We don't know. The long-term problem of modernizing the fleet is not solved, but it gets us through another year.
You're kicking the can down the road.
Bringing it back.
Well, this town, as we all know, is kicking a lot of cans down the road, and the capital area, perhaps most obviously, is kicking the can down the road. But I think the school committee will very seriously kicking this particular can down the road because of the impact on the working families and children that it would have for us to do this.
Yes.
The issue that's going on right now is that, yes, when it comes to buying more buses and spending money on capital items, that can has been kicked down the road. The problem is that now what we're facing is that the maintenance cost is now eating into our operating budget. And so that is the reason why we can no longer maintain, forget about the aging bus fleet and us doing everything that we can to make sure our transportation department and the superintendent making sure that those buses are 100% safe when they get on the road. But the problem is that now that is higher maintenance costs, which eats into our operating budget. So now we're, the chairman is right that we have a very, very hard decision to make at tonight's meeting and also at our next meeting. Are we going to basically vote as a committee to say we're going to deficit spend? which is not what we are elected to do. We were not elected to basically say that we're gonna go into this year and knowingly deficit spend without knowing whether we're gonna get this money or not. Or are we going to make the decision of cutting, knowing that if we cut services, that it is a safety issue. It's also an issue of attendance. There's so many issues that go into cutting that. So that decision is one of the hardest that I feel that I've ever had to make as a committee member. Knowingly go into deficit spending, or all of a sudden increase issues with safety and attendance.
But you don't know what's gonna happen. You don't know that you're gonna have safety issues and you're gonna have attendance issues. You surmise, but you don't know. And you're like picking food off the floor. You don't know whether it's gonna be there next year to survive. At some point, you have to face up to the fact that you don't have the revenue to support the fleets you're driving.
Right now, 125,000 will,
Let me
the money, the McKinney-Vento money would actually finally reimburse us the cost that we're paying out that the state didn't reimburse us for. So it takes a piece of the operating
Let
issue.
me add one more piece of information about why we're specifically here to you. I have been, perhaps rightly, leave that phrase out. The budget process for FY13 was, as you all know, a very difficult one. But in the end, after being assured by the Finance Committee that no additional money was available, this committee extremely reluctantly voted to accept less than $250,000, $250,000 less than last year's budget, with the hope that additional funds would be available through the debt exclusion override process. We were told, and I think in good faith, not in any threatening fashion, that if we didn't acquiesce to that budget of $250,000 less, that the Finance Committee would be essentially compelled as its first act to amend the budget so that it would be balanced on the backs of the school budget at town meeting. We feel it's I feel it's particularly important that the Finance Committee come out in support of both of these articles, but particularly the McKinney-Vento one, because if we know that the Finance Committee, let's assume we get the town administrator in support of this. And by the way, the last meeting of the so-called Transportation Action Committee indicated to me that he now has a much better knowledge of McKinney-Vento, and he's likely to be in support of that. So let's assume that he is supportive of that, and we know that the Finance Committee is also supportive of that. Now it's up to the voters at town meeting, and I have confidence that they will be supportive of it if those two entities, town administrator and the FinCom, are supportive. Yes, other people, including members of the Board of Selectmen, could stand up and opine against it, but it's a much more compelling for us to make a decision as of September 4th, a full 6 weeks or so, 7 weeks before town meeting, to go forward if we feel that this body plus the town administrator is supportive of this money coming to the non-net operating budget. Yeah, we do have to go, thank you.
Do we have to, any more comments? Well, it's clear my board does not want to vote on either one of these issues.
Yeah.
However,
I just want to say something.
sure.
It's not that I don't want to vote on it. I appreciate the fact that you would present this to us and that you value our opinion and want our support, okay? But personally, other situations have come along where people have come before us to solve get a solution to a problem, and I feel as though I'm going to reserve my opinion on this till after it's presented to the Board of Selectmen, because they are the leaders of this town, okay? And I think it's about time they step forward and make a decision, period. We will advise them as is our function, and we will advise town meeting.
Yes, Mr. Heath?
Thank you for the segue, Pam, okay, because the selectmen had a meeting last week. They chose not to put it on the agenda. This information was known well over a week ago. They requested, the school committee requested to be on the agenda. They weren't on the Tuesday prior to that. They weren't put on the agenda. They were, last night, right, there was a meeting, but it was other things were done, and the selectmen have made a decision to postpone this thing for 3 weeks, knowing all the urgencies. Quite frankly, I want to deal with the motion tonight because I don't trust them to deal with this on a timely basis. That's what it comes down to. I'm sorry, but that's the case. I've been through 2 town meetings where 3 committees were meeting in 3 different rooms. We supposedly had an understanding, and it fell apart in the last minute. And it wasn't the school committee that was doing that, that was the cause of it, okay? So,
I think.
we like you guys, by the way.
I think.
And I did vote for you.
I think you know where we stand. Where we want the selectmen to be accountable, and they should be accountable for, and I believe most of my board, I believe all my board feels that if it's supposed to go to you guys, it's supposed to go to you guys. It's just that they want to sit back and see how the selectmen deal with it. So I have to respect that.
We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chairman. Madam Chair.
Yes.
Might I suggest we ensure that this is on the agenda for the 22nd?
Yes. You can be assured that this will be on our agenda for the 23rd, Mr. Sweat.
Thank you very much.
22nd, rather.
22nd?
It'll be on our agenda. Okay. Given that, we have the town administrator, acting town administrator, or, I'm sorry, the analyst, the business analyst here today.
Don't get me in hot water.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Police escort or something.
Yes, well, he.
That was for you.
Yeah, well, it would be the first time.
Well, we've been going back and forth with the FEMA, all this
Oh, yeah,
stuff. So the gentleman that was in charge of all that and walked through the report with the people from FEMA, that my understanding, is here. And any questions that we have on that, Lieutenant Walsh, is it?
Walsh.
Jack Walsh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Well,
Come
you're
on
not
up.
as good as president.
I know, I'm sorry.
Because I'm getting a little math phobia. I had math in this class from many years ago, so please forgive me for that.
Yes. The floor is yours, Mr. Sullivan?
When we were speaking about the topic, I realized that probably the easiest thing is, rather than me trying to disseminate information going back and forth, was to bring the gentleman that ran this whole thing, did a fine job of it. Lieutenant Wilson's here tonight to answer questions and trying to bring as much information forward, because when I really started speaking to him, I realized that there was much more to it as how it was put together. So I think he's ready to speak about the process, or do you prefer Q&A instead?
Probably Q&A if you have any specific, I can give you some general information about it. Because I'm the Deputy Emergency Management Director, we were charged with the reimbursement project for the town. It's a double-edged sword. Thankfully, Wareham had enough damage that we were able to recoup money. Believe it or not, Norfolk County, I was told, could not recoup because they didn't meet their threshold for damages, so there were several towns that owed a lot of money there. And Plymouth County did. Basically, there are 2 categories that the FEMA breaks it down. Category A, which is after damages, after storm cleanup and repair, and Category B, which are called emergency protective measures. And we took all the town departments and asked them to bring whatever they had for Hurricane Irene, or Tropical Storm Irene rather, and bring all their paperwork that they had and put it together. And we had a kickoff meeting with Dave Clark, who was our FEMA project specialist. We had that meeting at the municipal maintenance department with various department heads, and they told what to do, and they brought their paperwork together. I submitted it, and the government through a few layers of checking, took some money out and added some money for us, and that's about it.
It's a start.
Okay.
You get 75% reimbursement?
Correct. 75% reimbursement, and, you know, they were pretty diligent about what they did. They actually came here, they took pictures, they measured things. I accompanied Mr. Clark on several of his visits here to town to verify our damages. And basically, he told me that Wareham overall was one of the better communities he had to deal with in terms of, you know, our record keeping and such for the storm. And we had Tropical Storm Earl, which I handled as well. So I learned a lot of lessons from that, and was able to apply it to the Irene storm. And so he, you know, the bottom line comes down to is there were things that we did not get compensated for, such as standby work, standby time. The federal government will not reimburse standby time. For example, with the EMS, although they felt it completely appropriate to put another ambulance on duty, they don't pay standby time. So what I did is I took all the log entries for the ambulance that responded in a 3-day period or something, and I submitted the log entries to the federal government. They looked at it and they said, you know what? None of these calls were storm related. You know, it was somebody with chest pains or somebody with a broken arm or something like that that had nothing to do with the storm. So they said we couldn't compensate you for that, so they put a red pen through that. One of the town departments took down some dead trees prior to the storm, and as he said, sometimes it doesn't pay to be proactive. He said sometimes it just, he said, I hate to say that, but sometimes it does. He said, probably a very good move on the part of the town to do that. But he said, if you had waited for the tree to fall and cause damage and havoc, it probably would have gotten compensated. But he said it doesn't pay to be proactive in some cases. And, you know, but generally he said that everything we asked for was reasonable and in line.
Have any questions? Yes, sir.
You said that we got 75%, so we got 75% of these numbers?
Yeah.
Payment one was 119, so we only, is that what we got? Or
No,
we got
that was
75%
what
of
we
that?
actually received.
We received the
It was
119.
135.
And the second payment was 135?
The actual amount was 135, and 75% of that was the 119.
I see, okay.
And then the second one was for 180, and then we received 135 for that. And that was the category A, category A stuff, which was the after effects.
That money goes right into the general fund, is that where that goes, or is that goes right directly to pay these bills?
It gets deposited into the general fund and
then you pay it
put it out to them. And one of the things, if I may, Madam
Yes.
Chair, is one of the questions was when you went around with Mr. Clark, did things that he said would get passed, did FEMA kick them back or anything like that? Did you just put like 250,000, or was there more money before the reimbursement? So you said we tried to get $300,000 worth of expenses. FEMA only allowed 250, and then that was reduced by the 74.
No, there wasn't. There was not a whole lot reduced. There was not. I think the first number we had to give an estimate. Immediately, FEMA asked for an estimate, and they said, you know, give us an estimate of damage for the town. And I think we said something to the effect of, you know, 350,000, and it was fairly accurate because I think it was totaled out to like 330 with the actual costs were. And I think we got virtually just about everything. They cut down some things, but it was marginal, I would say.
Yeah. You have a question?
Well, wait for Mr.
Oh, sorry, Dave.
I'm holding
Dave?
my tongue right now. Through you, Madam Chair. One of my concerns last meeting, not necessarily the reimbursement process or the amount of money, but what were our lessons learned? Did we document them? do our department heads clearly understand what the requirements are? And is there a central file that documents what actions the town has taken to ensure, one, that your job is easier next time, that each department head knows what the categories are, what the probabilities of them being reimbursed, and more importantly, the stuff that comes to you is in a format, because without that kind of stuff, what I fear is going to happen is someone will reach into their file from the last hurricane, pull it out, and duplicate the aforesaid, change dates, and give you the same stuff that may or may not have passed. So I'm looking to see that there was an after action, is what I'm really getting to.
I did submit an after action report to the federal government, and through my minimal experience in this, it was that the department heads were very careful about documenting everything and kept everything. And, you know, from receipts to overtime costs to benefits that are paid to employees, I felt that they were very careful, and as a matter of fact, I found them very helpful to me.
To follow up, Madam Chair.
Yes.
To that, do we have a written policy and procedures that gives guidance so that as department heads retire and move on, that there's a document that they can go to that says, here's what you have to do?
What I would answer to that would be that the federal government, in fact, prior to us sitting down to actually do the paperwork, has an informational meeting. And at that meeting, I would say the town doesn't have any, well, I wouldn't say there's anything in particular, but before that storm, they have this kickoff meeting, and they provide instruction and a folder to everybody, which I didn't bring. But one of the things I learned right away from the first storm, from the Earl storm, was, you know, we need to be a little better documented at the police department. I want to make sure that we were documented. So prior to the storm occurring, I had these forms made up. And these forms, in fact, I wanted everybody to fill it out every time they went on patrol, 24 hours before the storm and up till a week afterwards. Every time they went out on patrol, I wanted to write their mileage down, what officers were assigned to the car, and you know, how much gas they used at the end of the shift, so that I could actually say, okay, I actually gave a stack of those to the federal government. And so what would happen is, so for example, at this meeting at the Plymouth Public Library, prior to starting the whole project, department heads went there. I think Mr. Gifford went, and Mr. Campina, and they didn't go to my particular meeting, but they were at the other meetings that were offered to make sure that they got everything that they were owed. And again, they said that the Wareham paperwork was very thorough, which made me happy that we had all the documentation to prove that what we said accurately happened.
Yes.
Okay, now, when we were looking at it before, one of the issues with the year-end transfers was that there was a fairly significant deficit in municipal maintenance. And when we discussed it, it was because of the hurricane, or the, tropical storm, and that they didn't get the full reimbursement that they had planned or hoped to get. So that's where the questions really started for us, because we were trying to figure out what was submitted, what was actually approved for reimbursement, and what was reimbursed. And then we had a question about the allocation. So if you got a check for $135,000, was based on the paperwork that was approved, that's how you allocated it back to each individual department?
Yeah, in that, for the Earl storm, which we got considerably less money, I think it was in the order of maybe a $26,000 check to the town. I don't remember at the time. But we did it at the police department as emergency manager, you know, the emergency management department. We looked at it and were able to kind of figure out from the paperwork. This time, I believe the town treasurer did it through what I gave them. And, you know, I would say that each storm, I learned a little bit about it, but I felt like everything that I think the department heads put everything that they possibly could have, and I think the federal government was the one who said, you know what, we're not gonna pay this, we're not gonna pay that. And I think they were amply prepared, and I can't account for where that actually was, you know, once it came to the town, again, the treasurer's office took care of the lion's share of that.
I guess what we were concerned with is that if you look at the deficit that was caused in municipal maintenance, from what they were saying, you didn't see that same issue in other departments. So that's why we were questioning the reimbursement. But I understand what you're saying. You had a spreadsheet. That's what the treasurer used. And also you spoke about the trees, that taking down the dead trees, which they tried to submit, wasn't approved, but that was still an actual cost that they had in there.
That's correct.
So that's what we're trying to understand, why they could have a large deficit and no one else does, if it was a fairly thing. But now I'm starting to understand it, as you mentioned, the trees being cut down, and there was other things they didn't approve as well.
So yes, sir, and that's exactly what he said. And I even spoke to him today, Dave Clark, and I said, he said, by example, he said, I know that happened in Wareham, that some of the departments were very proactive, and probably prevented damage to important infrastructure, but.
Which is the right thing to do.
Which was the right thing to do. And even
job.
he said it was the right thing to do, but unfortunately, sometimes the government doesn't recognize that.
Then you've got the other side, because now you have a deficit spending situation. And now the other side of the government, or the DOR, is saying you can't have a deficit spending situation. So it's a double-edged sword here, but for our part, if we're asked to approve something or a transfer, it really helps us to understand what occurred, the process, which I think you've done a good job of explaining to us how that happened. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any more questions?
Yeah, we still didn't get our question answered, which was how much was submitted, what was rejected? Because we were looking at a deficit of $83,000.
Well,
That's about
we got
75%.
We got 315,000
No, that wasn't the
back,
75%.
We had 119, 168.
119, 135, right?
We had actually received back 119, 168, 95 for the category B paperwork, and we had
135, you said, for the other.
And for the other one, we had 135,
From
195, 65 in the category.
So we got
So
250.
45,000.
We actually got more for the after effects than we did for the emergency protective measures.
That's about right.
Yeah, it is.
Because it's 254,000 and they submitted 313, so that's,
But the deficit was all in municipal maintenance, not across the
well,
board.
I understand that, but
That's
then
why
when he
we asked.
explained that they
You're
did.
satisfied, I'm satisfied.
Well, I don't know that I'm satisfied, but I think I understand it better, because they were doing proactive work that wasn't approved. And that caused, obviously, they're getting overtime or whatever it is to do all that work, and that's significant as well. But, hopefully next time, and I hope we never have another issue like that, but it would be nice to see some sort of like a spreadsheet. And I know you got other things to do than worry about a spreadsheet at that time, but, something that gives us a better idea, because if these guys are, my biggest concern is that they're submitting things that not just weren't approved, but things that they shouldn't have submitted in the first place. I'm not.
And I certainly can't speak for any department on what their public safety vision is for their particular agency. I wouldn't think to tell Mark Gifford, this tree shouldn't come down, or whatever, or Guy Campina, don't go to this, sewer. I'm not exactly sure what they need to do.
Right.
But, I think I've been educated by it.
Right.
And I feel like we did everything we possibly could.
My thought is, this is such a Monday morning quarterbacking town.
Right.
All right,
Right.
that I have no problems with preemptive action, all right? But I think also the circumstances of those preemptions need to be known, and partners have to be involved in those decisions, all right? Rather than leaving it and then somebody coming back later and saying, well, that department head did it house A and didn't do it B, and you know what goes on all the time.
Right.
So I don't have a problem with, them taking preemptive action, but I think there should be some policy decisions making it done ahead of time.
That's what my
Right,
point
and
is.
partners should be signing in before knowing full well that we're not going to be reimbursed.
Because then we have a
Rather
deficit
than after the
situation, and
fact.
we're sitting here looking at year-end transfers, and they're saying, well, it's because of the hurricane or tropical storm, when in fact, it's really, it's still not approved, so, you know what I mean?
This goes back to the transfer as well. If we know that we have those expenses, we know that they were not anticipated,
Mhm.
we know that they were approved by the Board of Selectmen for particular reasons, it's very easy to make the proper decision on the transfer. We didn't make the transfer because we didn't have the information. It's that simple. If somebody had come in and said, we did some
I'm
preemptive
agreeing.
actions, and it cost us $80,000, we probably would have made the transfer and saved ourselves at least 2 meetings worth of discussion on the transfers.
Exactly.
We'll have to drag him out after hours.
Oh, and we also would not have done what we did, which got us in trouble with the Department of Revenue.
Okay.
Okay,
One real quick thing.
Anticipated consequences.
I know the municipal maintenance was the lion's share of all this, but all the other departments seem to be able to absorb the 25%. I mean, it just doesn't seem that, is it because it was such a large number that municipal maintenance couldn't, because he said they were paid, the money went into the general fund and everything was paid, correct? So, I mean, I know that, we only got 75%, and, there was the lion's share of the money, but all the other departments seem to be able to absorb it, correct? Am I correct in saying that, or am I wrong?
I think that all the other departments didn't have to do the the cutting of the trees and that. I would probably think that came from municipal maintenance.
They may have a bigger margin going in.
Yeah.
So then, really, the number we need to know is what more did they spend than the 25% they didn't get reimbursed, I guess is what I'm asking then,
He didn't, well,
I know,
Lieutenant's telling us that they didn't get reimbursed for
What
being
they did prior
proactive.
to, I understand that. Do we have that number? Is that a number that municipal maintenance can give us saying that we spent $20,000, $30,000 prior to the storm, and that's different than the 25% we didn't get? I was just trying to put a finger on the number, that's all. Because Frank says, we're what, 80,000?
I think municipal maintenance is a multifaceted problem, okay, with this particular year. Irene being only a minimal part of that.
Yeah.
The issue with the
No.
contracts, that increase, et cetera, the other expenses that they incurred, through the former TA, it's a multifaceted problem, unfortunately. I think it's a lesson learned.
And I think we all learned the lesson too, that we can get a spreadsheet as we know that they will, you've educated us on that too.
Yeah,
And we'll know what they're gonna pay, and it's up to the department heads to keep a close eye on it.
To what Tom was also saying, their situation is such, I suspect a good deal of it was also contractual services. All right,
Sure.
so we wound up paying a lot more money
Yeah.
than we would have if they were town employees, where other departments had the personnel were able to cover their jobs. Municipal maintenance may have been forced to go out and hire a contractor.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's another key issue for us. We get to keep that in mind.
Exactly.
So I agree with you, Don,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much,
Thank you.
Lieutenant, for coming, and you were very helpful to us, and
I hope
helped
so.
us put to bed outstanding issue.
Thank you, and just so you know, Dave Clark, I was in contact with him virtually daily during the process. And he was, he came down and coached us on different things, and was very cooperative and helpful with us with Wareham, so he was very, it worked out well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more thing before you leave, thank you for last night, the nights out, and all, it was a good time.
Oh, it was good. It was
Yeah,
good.
it seemed like I had good participation.
That's good,
Nice
yeah,
to
we
meet
want to
you.
make it bigger next year.
Good.
We have a lot of suggestions for next year, so thank you very much.
Seemed
for
like a
being
good
here.
night, thanks.
That was a good
Thank you.
one.
And thank you for the hot dogs. I didn't have one though.
Did you give out hot dogs, Dave?
I thought they were high
The
quality.
Elks give out hot dogs?
No, the Elks donates 1,000 hot
Oh,
dogs
did they?
every year.
Oh dear.
Those are
Oh.
the big things.
Can, if the board would, I've asked Brian, our new treasurer, to come down, town accountant, excuse me, to come down with that, Derek. And the reason that Brian is here, I got an email saying that I was going to get, a date on when we would get our reports in next week. And I said, I'm not going in telling my board that with all the information that the lack of information we've been receiving. And I figured he could come and give us an explanation of why we can't get information, we can't even get dates until next week when we're gonna get this information.
Sure. We just recently closed the books for FY12 in the last 5 days. Derek gave me some reports of prior committee meetings that I'm used as a guide, as well as reports that came out of Beta that Matt helped me with today. I want to make sure that the numbers for FY12 are complete, that they're accurate. I want to verify them, and I think I'll be able to email those to you no later than next Wednesday. My preference is to email those to you. I can email them to everybody on the committee, and then I can come on the 22nd and answer any follow-up questions.
Okay.
And
August 22nd, okay. That works for us.
That's fine.
I just wanted the board to have the opportunity to talk to Brian and let him know that we're gonna be holding his feet right to the stone for these numbers on a regular basis. And unfortunately, you're the recipient of all
Sure.
that. But I thank you for coming in.
You're welcome.
Does anyone have any questions?
I realize this is your end, no doubt in my mind, you're probably up against the wall with that. As we go forward, do you think it'd be something we could schedule like a third meeting of the month or something like that where we could go over the numbers? Is that something you could do? Is that something that's realistic to you?
well, for instance, tomorrow's payroll is actually going to be for July. So by the time it gets in,
Yeah.
the July numbers, it might not be until, another couple of weeks based upon vacation, things like that. So I might have numbers of first week in September for the month of July.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to get at. When's a
Yeah,
convenient
I
time?
would say,
A good time for you to get
anywhere
with
between
us?
4 and 5 weeks after that, at the end of the, previous month.
Okay.
If once you get yourself into a schedule and that, on a monthly basis, if you could meet with us, email us all out the report.
Sure.
And then we'll schedule the following meeting to have you in and on the agenda, and we'll have an opportunity to look at the reports and ask you questions.
Okay, the
If you would-
reports are pretty much, self-explanatory. Allocated, which is budgeted, expended for the month, and then the remaining balance.
Okay. That'll be fine.
I mean, basically, anything that has to do with like payroll or cash receipts. The reason why it wouldn't be, 4 weeks is only because of time difference, so they can book all the entries and things get in the system.
Oh, go ahead, Bonnie.
I'm not gonna get into a big debate over reports, because God knows I've listened to the debate over reports over 3 years now, okay? However, I will emphasize that for those of us who aren't all that sophisticated with the pretty little reports you guys make, that some sort of narrative.
Sure.
Or the points of, things that are trending strangely.
Okay.
And if there's a reasonable explanation for them, highlighting those points in a narrative is really important for us. I mean, we're looking at, we don't, we understand certain things come in at certain times in the year, and that expenses for certain areas sometimes are peak at one end but not at the other. So if there's a reasonable explanation why something is trending way out of its way, a simple narrative of this, and this is really helpful to us.
And I can take it a step further. I can actually, ask department heads if they incurred anything different in the month, whether it was, any kind of expenses, and same thing with the treasurer's office. And just put it in a bullet format, maybe 10 things
Yep.
that I thought had, changed.
That would be good. Yes, Dominic?
Kelly, through you to Kelly, do you email everything to Kelly too?
Yes.
Yeah, she
Yes,
can email
he
it
does.
to all.
Mhm.
So I can get it printed out, honey, from you?
Or you can just email it to her and she can
Okay.
get it out to us.
All right.
that's fine.
Only because I gotta get a printed copy, that's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, thank you for coming in. Does anyone have any other further questions before I?
So that's the 15th and the 22nd.
Okay,
Proceed on the 15th and discussion on the 22nd.
okay.
All right, beautiful. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Derek, do you have any more for us?
We have the transfer for the Upper Cape Regional expense,
Okay.
which I'll hand out.
No, we're waiting for a legal, weren't we waiting for a legal?
No, on the last one, you had agreed to do it. If I brought in the form, I didn't have the form that
Oh.
night.
We're very
We
prepared
made
for
rash
it.
promises like that?
We've changed our mind, we're fickle.
Shall.
I've learned to bring blank forms and write quickly. So.
And you said,
Thank you.
Okay.
So simply on this, for the people that are watching, is would be moving from the reserve fund, the $220,346 that we put into reserve fund at town meeting. When the Upper Cape Cod Technical Regional School budget was voted to level funding, that was the difference. We knew that there was a potential that the other member communities would vote in favor of their budgets, and if they did, we would be basically stuck having to pay our actual assessment. So now we need to bring that account up to whole to pay it. The present balance in the account listed is what's in the Upper Cape Regional expense, and we've already paid out our first quarter, roughly about $650,000.
Okay.
Want a motion?
I would entertain one.
Oh, hold on.
Do you have any questions? You give me the motion and we
Well,
can then have a
I'm
discussion.
waiting for him to make the motion so I can second it. Well, okay, I'm working on it. I move that we approve the request for transfer from the reserve fund of $220,346 to pay, to pay Upper Cape Regional for the full, what is it? FY 2013 balance due.
Assessment.
Second. That was a really bad motion. I was not prepared. I just asked if you wanted.
Okay, does anyone have any further discussion on this?
We beat this one to death
I
too.
think we did. Take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. One abstention.
Thank you.
Don't try to understand it.
I just have to stick to my principles, that's all.
Okay, moving on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can,
And I've also got, trying to get through is a vote for 1974 from the town clerk's office on the cafeteria.
Should I stop in this week?
Yes, I'll have it on my desk. I may not be able to grab it.
That means they should be there.
everybody. Okay, thank you, Derek.
Yeah, there's, if I may, and it's not on the agenda, there's just one thing when you were talking with the school tonight, and I've been thinking, we have funds coming in, and I think all of us have thought it's kind of crazy where you think that we have to fight for funds that are coming in, and you're creating two sides. A thought for the future that I've been working on that I would want the help from this committee, or ask for the help of this committee, is creating an actual revenue sharing agreement and system rather than the current in-kind that we have, which would mean actually listing out what the costs are and whose costs are what, breaking those out and fully funding it, rather than what the in-kind method is that we give the town 10 million, the school 25, then there's all sorts of different accounts that are spread out there, and I think that's really causing a problem, because with the revenue sharing agreement, if this money was coming in, we would already know where it's going. So if you did any local receipts, if there was an uptick of, let's call it $1 million, you know the split would be 60-40 or 70-30. It's actually setting out and negotiating ahead of time so that you're not fighting with one another over this. Some of the other communities have been using this system, and it's been working well. In down years, you both are absorbing the hit, same percentage-wise. Up years, you both are reaping the benefits, let's say. I think that may be something we need to look into.
That's a good point. It's a very good point that we could possibly, maybe we can work with the selectmen in coming up with some sort of agreement.
Would take some negotiation.
For sure, for sure. But it's a step in the positive direction. I think. Thank you. Okay. Does everyone have a copy of the 2 letters that Marilyn? I didn't have enough to send out. I don't think I made enough copies, but if you can share it. I just wanted people to look at it and see if,
Maybe it's in here. I don't think it's in here. Yeah, those are the 2 I have.
Oh.
what?
I did, I said that.
Well, okay.
I'm sorry.
It's the easiest way to get it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Marilyn has prepared 2 letters that we talked about, and she was going to send them all on out, but I think it's a good, Mr. Heath brought up that we should vote on them here and make sure that it's part of our record that we're sending them off to the selectmen. Anyone have any questions or any comments about them?
Yeah, I thought the letters were well written, concise, asked politely.
It's a matter of record. It's a matter of record from the FinCom. Do you have any
You want to take them separately?
concerns?
Are we voting on them together? Let's vote on them separately, because I think they're 2 different purposes.
Okay.
Anybody disagree with that?
Yeah, oh, no, I don't disagree with you.
I wonder, maybe we're a little too polite when it comes to the DOR letter, because I think we've had several discussions on this and the due dates, and we're bumping up against this. It's coming quick, and I don't think anything's been done. And, you know, the problem I have is maybe we haven't expressed the sense of urgency that perhaps, I mean,
I'd like to bring up a point too on that, because the DOR is coming in on the 13th. And Mr. Heath and I will be visiting with the selectmen and the DOR to go over issues. I think that, I don't think we should come across too heavy initially. We've got a new board of selectmen primarily, and I think we want to go into this with a spirit of working together and a spirit of cooperation on all parts. But however, we do want to be on record as putting the board of selectmen on notice. Yes?
Madam Chairman, I find you too kind. You really are,
Yeah.
okay? Because at this point in time, I'm not in the spirit of cooperation, okay? I would like to stomp my foot down and say, make a decision. Let's be proactive and stop dragging your feet. And by the way, there's a typo in the last one.
Okay.
Which letter?
It says completely, it says reporting is completely in a timely manner.
Okay.
On
Oh, you missed one of the first one.
I did, I must have read too fast then.
the commitment instead of the committee. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with you, Bonnie. I don't want to sing, hold hands and sing Kumbaya anymore. We really need to, this is getting old. This is not an issue that's brand new. We've talked about this for months. And I don't, I'm not singing Kumbaya anymore either. But you know what? If we could get the typos fixed and send it to them, I would, okay. This is probably gonna come out really bad. So Frank, stop me, or Donna, stop me at any time you want to. I don't think we need to write this letter, agree to it, and somebody sit up there at the Board of Selectmen and read it to them. And read it into the record in front of, you know, God and country, if you will. Because this is no, you know, we're at that point now where I don't think the message is being sent clear enough.
Yes, Mr.
Shouldn't we put our foot down more towards Powers and Sullivan's than the selectmen? I mean,
Powers and Sullivan cannot do it, and if the town administrator did not schedule it, you can't blame Powers and Sullivan.
well, when I read this, it says Powers and Sullivan will not be available to come to the end of November.
Well, because they weren't asked until recently.
There's several issues with that. One is they probably
Maybe there's more issues to it, but that's not what this letter states. It's not how it comes across to me. It comes across to me is that, maybe I'm reading it wrong, it comes across to me as Powers and Sullivan can't make it. It doesn't come across to me that the Board of Selectmen didn't ask them to come sooner or something. That's just not how I take the letter. I could be wrong.
No, well, it could be the way you're reading it, or we're interpreting it. It could definitely be. However, I do know for a fact that Powers and Sullivan was not even asked until Derek asked them.
Well, that should be, I think that should be in the body of the letter then, somewhere. Because if someone doesn't know that, Donna, and you read this, I don't get that.
Okay.
I'm sure. I think the previous sentence takes
What's
care
that,
of
Frank?
it. I think the previous sentence takes care of it, where it says, although we were previously assured that the accounting firm Powers and Sullivan had been engaged to perform the annual audit in early fall, we've been informed that in fact they were not engaged.
All right, so you believe that takes care of what I'm asking, Frank?
Yes, I think,
Okay, I'm reading it wrong.
and they're saying, you know, due to their schedule and prior commitments, they're not available.
If you guys feel that it gets that point across, I'm okay with it
I
then.
think
Okay.
because they schedule normally almost 6 months in advance.
Oh, okay, as long as you know my point, is what I'm trying to get.
Any other suggestions?
Yes,
Tom?
Isn't this all too late? I mean, this letter's gonna go out, and maybe you'll feel better that the letter went out, but is there anything that can be done now to meet a September schedule?
I don't think we know that. I think that's up to the Board of Selectmen. I
Yeah,
think
but
they
I mean,
have to get proactive and
We
decide.
asked,
You know,
we
rap
asked
on
them-
Powers and Sullivan's door and say, can you get here earlier?
okay, I think maybe there should be more of a next year
We're always
flavor
saying
to
next
it.
year, they haven't done it this year.
You know, this year and then, but if realizing the short time period now, we want to be well advised that this is put to bed in April of next year.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
at the last meeting, the chair appointed a member to the audit committee whose job is to make sure that's all done in advance. So that process is already in there. I don't know if it needs to be included in the letter. The letter, I think, is our insurance of saying, look, we've said all along, we don't want to hear on November 1st that our quarterly state aid is going to be impacted. All right? And then have everybody say, well, where was the finance committee? Well, this is where we are. We're saying we need to do something. Or find out exactly what the circumstances are. No, oh, by the way, we can't bill in January because the state won't let us. And that can happen. It almost happened last year. They won't let us set the tax rate. We can't bill until May. That causes us lending problems.
That causes a lot of people some serious financial harm. Because if you bought a house and at the end of this year, you can't make a change, and the house is under construction, they still value, say, at 30%, all of a sudden you bill in May, you're billing the 400%, and all of a sudden the guy's got a bill, it's staggering.
Actually,
Yes.
we also need to keep in mind that the November 1st letter was sent out subsequent to an incident that we had with the state where one of our quarterly payments had been put in jeopardy. So so that's part of our concern.
My point is that.
But you might not have known, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
there was,
I
there was
just
a
feel
whole
that-
series of events.
That there's a hoop that they can't jump through at this point in time to solve the problem.
And then somebody should be talking to the Department of Revenue
Okay,
and making
that's-
arrangements.
that's-
All right, the thing is not
that's
to get
the
to
answer.
October 31st and say, oh my God, this really was a serious letter? Maybe
That's the
we could-
answer.
That's their discussion.
And we will discuss that.
That
with you,
discussion can start, you know, well, the selectmen can start the discussion as early as next Monday.
Yes, yes, I can. Yeah.
There's a meeting about
Oh, it just went in
our
today.
complying with year-end procedures.
So are the letters acceptable? Can I have a?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to send the letters with the edits.
Absolutely, absolutely. Somebody want to give me a copy of the edit, because I didn't have enough copies, I just kind of printed these off at.
My bad, thank you.
And I'll get everyone a copy of the ones that do go. Okay?
All right, we'll get to
Go ahead.
I
You trying to make a motion?
I just did, I made a
Second.
motion to send these letters to the appropriate authorities.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Okay, we'll get them to you. All right.
Madam Chairman, Mayor, when we get the minutes given to us at the next meeting to approve, could we include the letters this time, rather than
In the
just
minutes?
Yes.
Yes?
Normally, we
Yes.
do attach them for the town clerk's office, but I'd like to have those letters attached for our copies as well.
Okay. To the meeting? Okay. Do you have a copy of the forms? Okay, I'll get them, okay, I'll have to get them to you. All right, community preservation. Mrs. Slavin, would you come up and have a seat, please? Getting a lot done tonight, guys. So please do. Ooh, sugar.
Good recovery, John.
Wasn't that great? Wasn't that good? Thank you. Okay, thank you for coming. I appreciate you both coming in, and we've had a general concern about where we are with the community preservation, the financials and the statements, and can you give us a heads up?
I have a lot of numbers. You asked me to come and talk about financials.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm Sandy Slavin. I am the treasurer. I'm Angela Dunham, CBC chair.
Oh, thank you for coming.
So I'm prepared to answer any questions you have. I wasn't sure how you wanted it presented or what type of documents you wanted from me. So I'm going to say up front, these are my numbers. They have not been confirmed with the town yet.
Okay.
This town has still not given me FY11 final numbers to be posted into FY12 starting balances. So these are my records and my numbers.
Are you waiting to do that with Brian? Is that?
They've been waiting for responses from Powers and Sullivan. They've been waiting for responses from Justin and his company. Documents were sent to the state and they didn't have the same numbers on them, and Justin has asked to have that reopened and redone, corrected. So they're aware that I'm waiting. I'm aware that they're waiting for some final information from Justin and Powers and Sullivan. So
Maybe you guys should do a letter.
well, I'm in the office every 2 days. They see me come in and hide under the desk. So they're trying to get the answers they need so that we can work together to make sure we've got that we both agree to the numbers to end FY12.
Through you, Madam Chair. This has been a real opportunity for improvement on both the town and the CPC in terms of accountability. The first couple of years, it was tough to get some numbers. Since you've come on, we've got some numbers.
And at one point, we were actually in agreement with the town, from what I
There were a
understand.
couple $1,000 in
Yeah,
there.
I mean, chunk
yeah.
change. And the intent was that you would at some point likely be able to agree.
Yes, but Liz and I had agreed. We had our numbers in line, and that was the numbers presented to this committee. Yep, so we were there.
So the next obvious question is, where did it go wrong? Yeah, I know, if you knew, you would.
To me, it went wrong when we lost our accountant.
And the people that were in for the one-year contract,
I can't comment, I won't comment on them, I didn't have any dealings with them.
Oh, the town account, the company that did the temporary.
So, when I found out what I thought were wrong numbers sent to the state, I went to them and we talked about it. They felt that, yes, there were some disconnects, timings, issues. The numbers from Power and Sullivan were not the real year-end numbers, but they reported it before final postings were made. So there had been meetings with the company that was acting as our town accountants. And that's where it was left when they left that position.
how far out of whack are we between what the town thinks your numbers are and what you think your numbers are?
Well, example, the $150,000 at the special town meeting to finish our reserve accounts were never included or posted. So that's $150,000 that we believe were transferred from the unallocated amounts to our reserves, because right now, based on what was reported to the state, we overspent by $150,000 because this special town meeting article was never posted on the town books, or were posted after Powers and Sullivan did their numbers for Justin to use.
Seems that Camp Chaos is still in action.
But Judy and Brian are working very hard to get some resolutions so that then we can sit down and agree to the numbers. But I feel very comfortable with my numbers.
That was my question.
I feel very comfortable with my numbers.
That's my question, thank you.
Sandy is very diligent about keeping her paperwork and her bookwork. She's
Yeah.
meticulous with her
We
bookwork,
understand.
and we have no qualms with what she presents from our end.
So what's the resolution? That's, I guess, what I'm at.
Well, Brian has indicated that Powers and Sullivan got back to that department yesterday, I think it is, and he's trying to see if we can get together before Judy goes on vacation, which is sometime next week, I think. But, I mean, if I was to take a look at my numbers right now, based on what I have for FY13, I believe CPC has a total fund balance of $1.3 million. This is what was allocated, this was the balance, estimated revenue for the 3% from FY12 and FY13, the estimated revenue from the state match in FY13, the items that we allocated in the spring town meeting, that we have about just under $1.3 million available, whether they are in reserve or unallocated or FY13 estimated revenues. And we only have one project that has come before CPC to be spent this year, and that was the restoration of the old town hall. The article came in, the grant request came in for $80,000, but we've asked Mr. Gifford to get us some real good estimates, and they've come in much lower than that. But there should be no problem even granting $80,000 or anything lower than that. We have the funds for this one article that will come before fall town meeting.
Okay.
We have allocated all our 10% to our reserve accounts. We have allocated all the money needed for the debt payment of Tremont Nail and Bryant Farm. So all our debts, all our requirements have been funded.
Okay. Yes.
What is the current rate at which the state is reimbursing?
Last year, because we were at a 3%, I believe we got 33. I think there was an estimate of 25 this year. I estimated 20% of our 3%, so I would not overestimate it.
So
So
very cautious.
yes, and they're still talking about 25%, but because we're 3%, there are various reviews of the balances and stuff like that. So last year, we ended up with 33%. So I'm still looking at 25.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
What is the impact if the town was to reduce the 3% to another number, like 2 or 1%? What is the impact on CPC?
We would have less money to fund projects. And we would have less, we would be on the lower percentage reimbursement from the state.
So in the funds that you've committed, Bryant, Tremont, et cetera, would now be much more difficult to fund. Would that be a correct statement?
Well, if we were to go down to, say, 1%, 3% gives me 515, 1% would give me, I don't know. I'm having a tough time. I would say we would probably
17.
We would probably end up with no more than 170, maybe 170 for the 1% versus the 515 for the 3%, and the town and the state would match us probably 20. So we would have probably 200,000 to work with each year. Our debt payment for Bryant Farm is running just over. Bryant Farm is running about 7,000 a year, and Tremont Nail is just over 100,000. So we would be able to take care of our debt exclusions. 10% of each of those have to be set aside in our reserves. So we would find ourselves probably eating into our unallocated from previous years to make the debt payment in 10% set-asides.
Thank you for that clarification.
I just, for point of fact, the balance on Tremont Nail is $865,000 we owe for Tremont, and Bryant Farm is $61,000.
How many years is that?
It was a 20-year.
Oh, okay.
It was a 20-year loan.
11 years?
Oh, see, I can't. And I think we'll be paid off in 2023. That's the final payment.
What's the carry on
I
that?
don't.
What interest rate?
It doesn't say what the interest rate. Oh, yes, it does. Sorry. Net interest cost 3.945. Because this was done in 2005.
And that's a no prepayment.
No prepayment. We must pay to the end. And yes, we were quite surprised to find that we were tacked onto a bond submitted by the town, because this was acquisition of land. There was a special process in which the town could bond things because land was included. And so we're paying this off until 2023. And I wasn't sure what you wanted for projects, paperwork. I have a list of all our open projects that the monies have been allocated, and that's an outstanding of just under $1.7 million of allocated funds for projects that are being worked on. And we have, as I said, about that 1.3 million funds available right now.
Okay. So you anticipate you'll be getting together with the town accountant and resolving it?
As I said, every 2 days I'm in there asking for, can we do it yet? Can we do it yet? So.
Question, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Through you, the state just voted new calculation funds for CPC. Do we have any idea how that's going to affect us?
That will be
That's
available in FY14.
Okay.
That extra funding was at 13 million. 13 million will be allocated out as part of our, along with the revenue from land activity. They're saying FY14 before we see it, which means we won't get it until very late into FY14.
Okay.
An
October timeframe.
Do we know what kind of percentage Wareham's gonna get of the 13?
Well, it's gonna, no, because honestly, a lot of the, more towns are coming into the pool, which is then diluting the pool to everybody in there. And if we were reduced from 3 to lower, we would have less of the pool. I mean, it's just, I don't think, maybe did one town back out, maybe, but I think more are always coming in, so. But they did say there was a little bit more money available because there were more closing activities. So instead of raising the funds for closing activities, they decided to give a lump sum payment into that CPA fund to be allocated out as opposed to charging everybody more money. Is that, Mr. Heath?
Yes, that helps.
Anyone else have any questions? All right,
Can I ask a question?
certainly.
Did anybody have a chance to go on the webinar that went out on the training for the new CPC law?
No.
CPA law, excuse me.
Did you?
I did.
Did you?
I did. It's going to happen again, so when it happens
Was
again.
it very helpful to you?
It was.
It was, okay.
When it happens again, and it's going to be rerun, but I don't have a specific date.
Okay.
If it's okay, I can email it to you,
Certainly.
and then you can distribute it to your
Certainly,
community,
certainly.
please. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
The more we know, the better.
Yes.
Through you, I would ask that when your article comes forward in October, that you have sort of a formalized report for us so that we can see exactly where we stand at that point when we make our
Be happy
recommendation.
to, if I had, I mean, I can very well take the documents I have and go to the printer right now, and that's all your documents.
I'll give you more time, so when the article comes up, if we can have it at
Yeah,
that
if we
point.
could just,
At that point, we'll
I'm
have a
just
better
trying to get an
understanding.
idea of what you're looking for. I have 4 separate reports, and I don't know what flavor you want.
We're looking for what you presented tonight, actually. The information that you gave us tonight would be very helpful.
If you have 4 separate reports, then it's not an overburden. Put them all together when you come in for the thing, and then that will make it easier for us to sift through data.
Well, I could email them to you ahead of time, so you have them to look at before you're at the
That would
meeting,
be
as
great.
opposed to
That would be
taking
great.
a look at them.
That would be great. I appreciate that. It would be very good. Okay.
And I'm only here because the CPC meeting got removed off for another week, or I would have been going
Oh.
over.
Are you going to tattle on mine?
No.
Okay.
But
I
we
shut my
just-
computer down very quickly as I was sending out the notice and agenda. I shut it down so quickly because I was in a hurry that the email didn't get out on time.
Oh, dear.
But as I said, the only article we have on pending is the restoration of the old town hall.
Okay, that's much needed.
This is not a money item, but the restoration of the town hall is gonna be something less than $80,000.
Yes.
But we've gotta wait till October to get that approved, to spend the money.
Yes.
So we're gonna be painting the building in December,
We could,
possibly, if it gets
well,
approved.
it would
So-
have to go for RFP and stuff like that, so maybe it takes a longer time to,
It's only been 5 or 6 years to now.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I do have a name to ask a question, I'm sorry.
Oh,
but I
okay.
mean, yes, once it's approved in October, it still has to go through the RFP and everything else to get it worked on.
Oh, in March.
The office building at Tremont now,
It's a-
I'm getting to understand is
Black guy for the 10.
thoroughly filled with mold. Is there plans for the CPC to address that issue?
We have been talking about that for quite a while, and that could be a new project coming up, yes. We've been talking about going over there and perhaps renovating it restoring it for office space.
I'm given to understand that there's water that goes through the basement.
Yes, there's a river that runs through the basement of that building.
They can get very powerful mold action. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Did anybody have a chance to see that the roof is going on?
I saw the roof, yeah.
On the tree line, yeah?
Thank you, ladies.
I just drove by, there was a few guys with these shirts off, it was fine.
I'm surprised you saw the move.
Yeah, well, I haven't heard it quite that way.
I'm sorry, that's Southern, I shouldn't have said it that way. That's what it is.
I agree. Okay. Moving right along. I guess, what's on that? Mission statements for the public media, for the media. We had talked about getting something together and putting something, talking with the folks from the Wareham Week and putting something out, letting folks know what we do. Larry's concerned about people not knowing what we do, so he, you know.
No, that's not that I'm concerned. I backed to it a little bit, and I went out and read some of the peanut gallery, and shouldn't have done it. I had an email citing a source, and I went out there, and I didn't write anything, of course, but I was themed. I think it's, and again, I should never pay attention to that kind of stuff, but it would be interesting to me, and I don't want to get back in a back and forth with these kind of people out there, because a lot of people just don't have anything better to do than sit out there and do that. But I think it is important that what we discuss in here as far as the factual information, and something as simple as who is on this committee, and I don't know, I mean, it would be nice. You know, if someone sees something out there from, say, a former committee member, so, well, he's a member of the FinCom. Well, he's not a member of the FinCom anymore. He's a former member. So it would be helpful, I think, from our standpoint, if we had a column or a blog. God, I hate that word sometimes. A blog out there on Wareham Week that says, you know, this is what the facts, this is what was discussed at the meeting. Maybe even something as far as, you know, not opinion, but facts of what we discussed. These are the members, you know, that leave that up there or put that up for the first time. And I don't think we need to engage either. If somebody writes something underneath there, I don't think it's our job to engage. Our job is to put out the facts from our meeting, or maybe take a topic in our meeting that's going to be very controversial or not controversial, something people need to know, put it into that.
Everything.
Huh?
Everything you put on there is gonna be controversial and have a big bullseye on it.
Why?
Just how I feel.
Yeah, but that's not the point. The point is,
I know what you're trying to get at, and I agree with you.
our job is to inform, our job is to advise the town meeting body, which is the people out there. So if we can get the information out beforehand, why not get it out there? We have a perfect opportunity to do that. We have a couple of writers in the group, but it's not about our opinion, because let me tell you, if everybody put our opinions out there, it'd be real interesting too. But our job is to put the facts out there. This is what we're discussing. These are the facts associated with it, and leave it at that. If somebody wants to write underneath there that, you know, we're a bunch of morons, let them write it. It's not. We don't need to engage them. We just need to get it out there. We can pretty much declare ourselves out if we want, but. Does that make sense, or are we just really, are we inviting more trouble than are we? I mean, we don't have to respond. It's not a give and take situation.
Well, I think we could definitely talk with the media and put together something, issues of concern and what we're working on with the whether it be the schools, whether it be the Quinn Bill, enlighten taxpayers to know, hey, this is what's happened. This is what's happening, and this is what FinCom's working on right now.
Yeah.
We're all paying this, and now the state's not paying this, and it's gonna. If you decide to do this, fine, but this is what it's going to cost you. And I think we should put things like that out in the media and let people read about it, because they're going to say, geez, I didn't know that. I thought it was state reimbursed for everything. And a lot of people don't even know what the Quinn bill is, probably.
Right.
I think items like that, if you're really clear about, you know, upcoming agenda items or topics of discussion, things in just you know, I don't know who wants to be in charge of writing these things and which papers you have permission to print this in, but, you know, just the facts, you know, we're stating.
Exactly.
Just the facts of.
I agree.
An explanation, no opinions whatsoever. I don't even want any general consensus of the FinCom.
No.
That sort of thing. I don't want anybody making statements that the general consensus of the FinCom is blah, 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 blah. I just don't feel that that's appropriate in any way, shape, or form.
It isn't. It's, all we should be putting out is, these are the facts.
If they really want to know more, they'll come to the meeting.
Right, that's what I mean. I mean, if you want to do things like that, I have no objection to that.
Said it with a straight face.
That at all. You know, as long as it's well written and that there's, you know, and that the facts are accurate.
Right.
No misleading information.
No, and I agree. That's what I'm saying is I think we have a perfect opportunity to bring the issues that we consider as a group important out before town meeting. It's kind of like them mailing us the report before we have a chance to discuss it. Well, that's what we're trying to do. They're coming to town meeting. They're going to decide on a lot of things. Let's give them a chance to read about it before they come to town meeting. So, and believe me, we don't have to put any opinions out there. The minute that goes out there, there'll be a lot of opinions out there. And you can pick and choose whichever one you want to believe or whatever it is, but we don't need to be part of the opinion process. We just need to be part of the fact process.
Exactly. Anybody
Does that
have
make
any
sense?
questions, both?
I would push it a whole different way. I think that we ought to educate the town as to where all of the revenue goes in this town, and that would include the water districts and the fire department, the whole bundle of money that's getting spent here. And are there other ways to do it that make the town would run more efficiently and we get better services for the investments being made?
We have no jurisdiction on the water.
But I'm just saying this is an education. This just says, here's how this is set up. You've got an accountant in the school department, you got an accountant doing the fire department, you got overhead all over the place that could be more efficiently, we could organize the town better, get better return from the tax dollars that are being spent.
Unfortunately.
And that's the education part of it, I think. You don't have to have an opinion, but just say, here it is, guys.
I mentioned to you before, the publisher and editor of Wareham Week are waiting for us to call them and say they'd like to sit down and discuss a column that we could make our contributions to. All right, so it's just, the answer is yes, it can be done. Yes, they want to talk about, at least one of the papers wants to talk about doing it. And we also had the Standard Times at one time contacted us. I think we talked to their reporter, we might be able to get something from them as well. But Wareham Week's just waiting for us to call them. We're waiting for 4 weeks now.
Then let's have them come to the meeting. Would it be the best time to do it at a meeting?
No, they want to talk about they're looking for the chairman to come and explain what we would like to do and what the ground rules would be, et cetera, because they have space limitations as well. And the conversations I had with the editor was, if you do the Reader's Digest version on various subjects, because they're sort of like the USA Today paper. They're saying, I can't give you a full page, but if you can succinctly put stuff in a certain amount of space, that'd be great for us if we could run something every week. But they want to talk about it before they commit to anything.
Okay, I will make a point to call them this week and set up an appointment and tell them about, what we would like to do, and no opinions, just strictly facts and the issues that we're discussing. And then we can decide together what we are going to filter to them. We've got Marilyn to write and whatever. So.
We've also had Mr. White make several requests about doing short segments with us as well.
Yes, he has.
So, I think we need to put that together somehow as well.
Okay.
And the opportunity, people are there, they're asking, we just have to take advantage of it.
I just think we need to do like people do with us. We need to do like we're getting information. We want it beforehand so we can talk about it intelligently. We want to get it out to people before they come to town meeting and start voting. Because ultimately, 2.5 hours on the town meeting floor, a lot of those people can be really long-winded, and it's just really bad. I've tried really hard not to be so long-winded. Thank you.
Okay. The message.
We charge them by the minute.
Okay.
Working a lot for
The message is here, and we'll get it, Mr. Heath, you gonna work on this with me?
I guess so.
Thank you.
He's long-winded too.
Okay.
So they get a short speech?
Probably, I think Mrs. Donahue also should be with it.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
She's probably
She's
like
a-
99% of it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, okay. All right,
Just one thing though, if we do this, then at all costs, we cannot block for any reason. All right, and, I mean, we just can't. We'll have our voice,
I
etc.
can't log in this Snoopy 965 anymore?
No, you can't do that, I'm sorry. But I was saying, there'll be a great temptation to respond at times.
No.
The thing is, you just can't. I wouldn't even read what,
I don't even go
forget
there.
the blog site.
Contrary
I
to what
never
you.
go to the site, so it's.
Well, and I don't, I have made it a point of not, but I just got drawn back in by a comment that was made to me, and I went and looked, and it was like, but I didn't respond, which is, you know, look, I don't blog. For the record, on camera, I don't blog. I don't care who the heck thinks I'm somebody out there, I don't blog.
well, what we can do about that is,
Ignore it.
exactly, just, we'll set up, we'll find an organization, will somebody find an organization for Larry, Bloggers Anonymous? So he can join?
I don't,
Okay.
I don't.
All right, moving on. Have we had any discussion with the Quinn Bill Committee?
Okay, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Last meeting, Marilyn indicated she had all the information she needed regarding what is proposed at the Quinn Bill. And we still have yet to meet. I was supposed to be with Derek last week getting a copy of the current contract and when it was voted in. You heard him tonight. He indicated that he'd have it ready for me tomorrow. Because when I went back to see him, he looked at me and we'll just say the data wasn't ready. There is one contentious issue. Selectmen are aware of it. We're currently paying whatever the state's not paying, plus the town portion. The policemen's union does have the right to claim that it goes on much longer, they can claim past practice.
Well, that's exactly what we want to get on top of this
And-
right away.
And I'm fairly calm about that because you get X amount of money if you end up doing this, it makes casualties on the uniform side, but neither here nor there. We, Tom, Marilyn, and I have not yet met. I haven't got the data out of Derek yet. Not for want of trying. I expect that I'll have that tomorrow, and we should be able to, the three of us, sit down at some point. Do you have an email now?
I do, yeah, I've had one since 2 meetings ago. Is that, do you know whether the police contract has a 100% guarantee?
I don't have a copy of the contract in my possession at this point. That's what I'm
We don't know that.
Speaking of email, did anybody besides me get yelled at for not deleting an email? Well, I didn't know, I just thought it was like Yahoo or something, or automatically deleted after you got so many.
Oh.
Yeah, I got a nasty email saying that I had 80% of my space filled. I resent it.
Is that backwards?
I've never
Didn't
deleted it since I got it. Oh,
Okay.
I've never looked at it.
I think there's a real opportunity here, Bonnie.
Okay,
If
so,
I may, the verbiage that's in the contract, you can find out first off, the contract is the 2004 contract, all right, that went through 2007, all right, and the contract refers to the Quinn Bill. It doesn't have 100% of anything, it just refers to the Quinn Bill.
So there's an opening for us.
Yes.
okay. All right, any other reports? Capital planning?
Anybody?
Anybody have any other reports to report on? If not,
Capital planning.
go ahead.
Capital planning met last Friday, and we're going to meet again this Friday to look to see if there's any items that we can do going forward. One of the questions that came up last Friday was, we built the stabilization fund because we were going to have to bond for the mining. Obviously, we're not going to be bonding for the mining. So there's $600,000 sitting out there in stabilization. All right, 150 of that was allocated from this year. And the question that the committee would like, we'll probably consider on Friday, would be whether or not we should request that 2/3 of that, or 100,000, all right, be set aside for current year capital assets. And instead of building it by 150, take it from the 100 that we were putting in, reduce it to only 50, reduce the 100, and see what we can get. $100,000, if you're leasing and borrowing on bonds, it gets you over $500,000 worth of equipment. So that's part of what, now, this is all dependent upon the department heads submitting to the town administrator by Friday, all right, their list of what they need. And then the committee may come back and we'll come back and make a suggestion, or run your member on the committee.
Mhm.
That's what we were looking at, saying there's really no need to fund it at the $600,000 level.
Derek has a copy of the last Excel spreadsheet somewhere on his computer.
Yes, but what they were gonna do is go back and ask for each of the department heads to prioritize. And, there's a bunch of them, just changing it, and then, remember, it's supposed to be the town administrator does the prioritization, not the committee, so that's what we're looking for.
Right, but I guess my point is that all I would ever do is take the spreadsheet that was finalized to the town, add another year, and then go back through, sift through what they changed, because
Right,
Jim's
Jim's
priorities come and go.
Tim was setting that up, because he sent a list out today, I just haven't had a chance to go through it.
Okay. Thought you were going home.
Okay.
Ooh, speaking of time,
The other
this is what I
item,
need.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Good job, Derek. Good
You
job.
really getting out of here for Friday. That must be an important date.
Now I can go away.
Yeah.
in your folder tonight, the little document says draft. All right, basically, I had an intern that was available to us courtesy of the Capital Planning Committee. All right, he was able to go back to the town charter and to sit down, work with people who were involved in putting the whole town meeting paperwork together, et cetera, and includes Kelly, which is probably our leading expert in the project. All right, she was kind enough to put this together for us. All right, this is the current schedule. What we're going to try to do is also convert this so that it's a countdown type calendar that can be used going forward.
Cool.
All right, I'd appreciate it if everybody would take a look and see if you think we missed anything. And like I said, a number of these dates, et cetera, are right out of the, right out of the charter, right out of the bylaws, et cetera. And then what we've done with those dates is gone back to people like Kelly and said, okay, if we're going to make this date, when do we have to have documents in place, et cetera. So that was the purpose of this. There might be some question marks on here, but that relates probably more to current year than it does necessarily to what normally would happen on the schedule. We can settle all that out.
This is really
Did
good.
this come out in a PDF format so we can put it on the record?
I also sent it, it is in PDF, it was in one doc, so yeah, it's in doc.
Okay, all right, thank you. Cool.
All right, but I know when I send stuff out, there are people come back and say I can't print it, so I also print this out a copy. So you have no excuses, it's on there, on your email, your town site,
Very good.
email address, and it's now in your possession.
Right.
Write that down, figure out, got a copy.
What document?
Okay.
I don't print things out, I don't print them.
Do we have any other liaison reports, community events, nothing?
I have a meeting next Monday.
Okay, all right. Okay, approval of the meeting, the minutes of July 25th, wasn't it?
It's July 11th and 25th.
Yeah, 11th and 25th, okay.
Several here together.
No, why don't we do them separately?
If
anybody has any questions. Has everyone had the opportunity to look at the July 11th one? Other than Dominic, he doesn't open his email. Any additions or subtractions? Anybody have anything to comment on them? Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes of the meeting of July 11th?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Unanimous? Okay, and the meetings of July 25th.
Yes, Madam Chair, I have one small item on that. In the new business, number 7, the very last statement says determine this appointment is for 1 year. We were very careful to say it was 1 calendar year. So it runs from January 1st to December 31st.
That was my way to get out of it in December.
All right, so basically deals with the audit committee. So
Oh, okay.
determine this appointment is for 1 calendar year. Very last page.
Okay.
I move that we accept the minutes as edited.
Okay, can I have a motion to accept the minutes of July 25th as amended?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I wasn't there, so.
I mean, I don't see, I was not there.
Okay, 2 abstentions. Okay, all right, we're all set with, any new business? Unanticipated items? Yes.
I want to bring something up and see if anyone has any knowledge to it. Regarding the cleanup on Sandwich Road, does anyone, I don't know a whole lot about it, so I'll speak just from what I've actually heard. Why, does anyone know why we had some very inexpensive quotes to clean that up, and then we ended up spending a lot more than those quotes were? Does anyone have any enlightenment on why that happened?
Asbestos?
Yeah.
But hear me out. We got a quote from a company to clean up the site for $5,000, I believe, or don't quote me on the amount. Obviously, the company went out and looked at the site and gave us a quote. Now, if there was asbestos on the site, that is the company's problem, not the town's problem. They said they would clean up the site for that amount of money. If they underquoted the job, that's their problem, not the town's problem. Why should the town come back and step in and say, oh, well, now that has asbestos, and we have to pay more? It's the company's problem for not doing their due diligence correctly. Am I right or wrong?
Actually, I think the problem is not the town stepping in, the state stepped in.
And
now-
that's right, that's what I'm asking, because that's not what I heard, and I could be wrong.
I don't know, this is
Okay,
probably,
I just want to know why we ended up spending
I
6
don't-
times more.
I don't know the facts of what they found there, but I was there when they hauled the enclosed containers in to remove whatever it was.
It was asbestos from what we heard, asbestos, siding or tiling or something. That's what I heard.
Well, Mr. Slavin has offered to enlighten us on it. He knows, what does the committee choose to hear Mr. Slavin's? Pardon? Mr. Slavin?
Project was involving fire department, which is the district, involved the police, involved Board of Health, involved inspection services. So first they had to figure out who was going to try and get an authority, and you had the most authority as far as the overall project. So that's why things kept going back and forth. The bottom line is, yeah, there was asbestos, I think roof shingles actually. They were supposed to be contained in a certain area. They would be removed separately, handled separately. Somehow they get mixed in and ground into the ground. The DEP got pulled in. We were basically enjoined from touching it at all. We basically had a court order, cease and desist order. It was completely out of the town's hands at that point. we have to follow what the federal government basically tells us. And that's what happened, we had no control.
Well, that's all well and good. I understand the rules, the laws, and the regulations, but isn't that the contractor's problem? As far as our cost. Go ahead, I'm listening.
I'm not gonna get into too much because it's a legal issue.
Oh, okay.
It involves town employee as well as the contractor, so we're not going there.
As, Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
as I understand it now,
Yeah.
they're gonna put a lien on that piece of property.
And, yeah.
Now, the lien accrues interest at a greater rate than we can possibly earn in our Plymouth County Retirement Fund. So, with that in mind,
Yes.
they probably didn't care, because they're putting a lien on a piece of property. It's gonna be another one of those uncollected tax bills until such time as it gets settled and taken in the land court. So,
The town's gonna end up with the land, I know the guys in the nursing home and all that.
Right.
And, you know, the town gets the land and all that. I was just curious of, you know, I just feel like the contractor should have been, we should have only paid that much. And
It was
that's
taken,
good.
it was taken out of everybody's hands.
Okay, thank you, you answered my question. I just heard a lot about it, and I just wanted to try to get some information on it, that's all. Thanks, Al.
Okay, anything else? Anything further?
motion to adjourn. Well, that's the one you want.
Second.
All right, before we do that, can we discuss it next meeting?
22nd.
22nd, yes. August 22nd. Obviously, we're going to have a lot of things to discuss. We'll get the agenda out and that, and look forward to seeing everyone. But I will, there's a motion on the floor to adjourn. Can we get a second? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
Dominic's opposed to